What's going on, everybody? What are your strengths? This is something I've been thinking a lot about. Something I've struggled with is actually an insecurity of mine, talking about my strengths. I've never wanted to be perceived as bragging or cocky, and I've always tried really hard to sport that humility, but I think sometimes I've failed because I've almost talked myself down in situations instead of being honest and truthful. And I had a really good person in my life that once told me I need to get better at selling myself. I don't know if that was necessarily what I needed to do, but I also had this individual tell me that the most accurate way that you can represent yourself and the most humble way to represent yourself is accurately. And so when we talk about selling ourselves, we need to think about how do we accurately communicate ourselves. So from that perspective, I think he was right on. And this is something I've always struggled with because you don't want that negative perception of, oh, hey, he's cocky. He thinks he's all that. He thinks he's all this. He thinks he's better than everybody. Nobody likes that perception. However, you're never going to be able to create thoughts in another person. You don't know what they're going to think. They might, even if you're the most humble person ever, they might still think you're cocky and arrogant. And guess what? That's okay. You let them think that. You know your motivation. You know where your heart is. But the way we go about things matters, so we need to be careful. So this is something I've always struggled with, and a really great way to kind of get over yourself and get out of your own way is to go to people really close to you in your life, one-on-one, in private, and sort of validate with them, hey, what do you think my strengths are? What do you think I'm really good at? If you don't know already, maybe you already have a pretty good idea. This is actually an exercise I went through, and I was pretty shocked at what I heard back. It's really something that I've always been able to do, I've always done, and it's not necessarily my favorite thing to do, but it's not bad. I could get used to it. But the one thing I kept hearing over and over and over and over again was, you're really good at speaking. And I never thought of myself as a good speaker. I knew I could do it. I didn't necessarily like to do it. I had done a lot of it, or at least a decent amount, I thought. So, I've always been confident with it. But I thought that was really interesting. And really, as I've gone through that validation exercise, I started thinking about, man, does speaking just come naturally to me? Or what? And I want you to think about that too for your strengths, because I think a lot of people, they do have sort of natural tendencies and strengths, but their lane and where they're really good, there's usually a track record that goes along with that. So I want to share, I did a little brainstorming based on this feedback I've been getting. I did a little brainstorming of all the speaking I've done publicly throughout my life. And this is probably not, I'm 100% sure it's not an exhaustive list. So when I was young, I was forced to do speech competitions. We did memory speaking. So I had to memorize the Declaration of Independence and recite that for large groups of people. The Gettysburg Address, Matthew 5, 1 through 20. We did a lot of Bible memorization, Romans 8, Psalm 23, Psalm 100, Psalm 51, and poetry. Little Orphan Annie, Custer the Dragon, all sorts of poetry. This was just part of my schooling. I went to private schools, I was doing these speech competitions. Luckily, my parents enrolled me in that stuff. So from a young age, we were memorizing the catechism, daily prayer out loud with our family, reading God's word out loud with our family every single day. Even just practicing speaking in front of your family every day is big. Then it got to, hundreds and hundreds of songs. It's not necessarily speaking, but, singing with a choir in front of people. That's performing. That's almost like public speaking experience in a way. And also solo. I learned guitar, I started playing songs, memorized songs. I performed some of those for people. I had to perform solos and things also throughout my life. In sports, 3-sport captain. I led the defense in football, so I had to do a lot of speaking, calling all the defensive plays. also, as a captain, you end up speaking to the team and addressing the team a lot. So, football, baseball, basketball captain, two-time captain in my college baseball team. Lots of speaking. I would get up and introduce our team to restaurants and lead our team and lead the freshmen in the fight song at the end of our team dinners, because that's what the freshmen had to do. And those situations don't come natural. That wasn't, hey, Phil's just, a natural. You can see this evidence, and I was talking with Sergio Fernandez, a good friend of mine, on my podcast, GLA podcast, a while back. He was talking about, and it may have not even made it in the podcast, we were talking offline. He was telling me all the entrepreneurial things that he had done, and it was so clear, like, dude, you're just an entrepreneur through and through. Like, there's just evidence of it in your life, right? And so as I started getting this feedback from people, hey, you're good at speaking, it's like, well, man, there's all this evidence. I was the volleyball announcer at Wayne State University. I did impromptu announcing at our baseball camps and the alumni games. I wrote poems and recited things at all sorts of high school events. There's just so many pieces of evidence through my life that would say, hey, Phil, guess what? You're probably pretty good at speaking. But it didn't even register to me until somebody else told me that, hey, Phil, you're good at speaking. And then I had the confidence to go, hey, you know what? Maybe I am good at speaking. Maybe that is something I'm good at. And it's not cockiness. I know there's plenty of better speakers than I am out there. But think about your strengths and what you're good at. If you don't know, maybe ask some people close to you. Think about how you can build those strengths. Think about how you can leverage those strengths more in your daily life. Think about how you can take advantage of those things you're really good at and apply them in everything you do, in your community, in your work, in your church. Think about how you can leverage those tools to be the best you can be and go lead everything you do. So I hope this helps y'all. Have a good evening.